Yeah, and I think going back to your earlier comment, which I love, don't give pain a voice. Like the simple element is I'm feeling the pain at mile 38, but I'm not going to give it more power than it deserves.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the One Percenter podcast. I'm excited for you guys today. We have an awesome guest. He's one of the leaders in sports psychology, worked with some of the most famous athletes, worked with some of the most successful programs, worked with some of the most highest achievers that we have. So welcome, Trevor.
Thanks and the author of It Takes What It Takes.
Exactly.
Thanks, guys. How you doing?
We're good, man. Why don't you just start off by telling people a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you came into the sports psychology?
Yeah, the industry of sports psychology has kind of been one that's been around for 20 to 30 years, and it always kind of looked like it was sort of that next tier of sports. It was bigger, faster, stronger, more explosive. And when we got to fueling and fatigue science and all these things, and the mind was sort of this next area that was going to take off. I'm from Seattle, went to school in LA, played some pro soccer, was a high school teacher in LA Unified, ultimately made my way to Florida. And then I started working at a big sports academy called IMG Academy, which is like a 600-acre training center, sort of like Hogwarts for athletes. And I joined the sports psychology department there in 2000, 2001, just three of us. And we had an opportunity to work with every type of athletes you could imagine. And it was very similar to teaching, but you're focusing more on helping the athlete sort of maximize the human asset, that that mindset, that mentality, all those things. So really as kind of an assistant mental coach for $28,000, by the time I was 24, 25, you're picking up the Williams sisters from the airport, and you've got many of the best young draft picks that are out there training, best young tennis players, as well as 150 kids from Venezuela that you're babysitting for an hour, 8 CEOs that are down playing tennis with Nick Bollettieri. Just kind of a weird environment. My dad was a world-renowned professional speaker, one of the original authors of Chicken Soup for the Soul, the book series. He worked with Boeing and NASA and IBM. I just, sort of veered more towards sports and education, and then started in the NFL in 2002 with the Jacksonville Jaguars, then went to the Dolphins. And really more than anything, it's a small field. So I was able to get to the top of a small field, and then have always worked in business as well as with the military, but have probably made my name more than anything, helping support great organizations.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that you talk about the most is the power of negative thinking. And you've never bought into the positive thinking, and I agree with that. You can't, if you're going through something horrible, you can't just lie to yourself and be positive. So can you talk to us about how powerful negative thinking is, and then the switch to what you say is neutral thinking?
Well, it's not that I've never bought into positive thinking. It's just the fact that I think look, the industry is, if we're honest, has never really been widely accepted. Now, some of that, I'm talking about just the psychological architecture anyways, whether you call it life coaching, business psychology, mental performance, mental skills. Part of that is because, excuse me, sorry about that. We don't see psychological change the way we see physiological change. You can make an adjustment and modify your training model physically, and you can gain weight, you can see your explosiveness, you can see your body mass change. I think the same thing with diet and many of those other things. But psychologically, some of those adjustments we make take more time or they take less time, but we don't see them. So I think that's made, even from a coaching perspective and a hiring perspective in the business world, you kind of hope you get the right, male or female. You don't really know how you can get them better. What I think the unique challenge of positive thinking has been is, positive and negative thinking are both connected to outcomes. And many times the way positive thinking is explained and utilized is if Sam's going through a divorce, and the issue is, hey, you need to be more positive. Think about all the people you get to meet now. Think about the life you get to live now. Think about the places you get to go now. Well, your mind a lot of time, going through a challenge like that, might not be, that's too fast, already trying to think about the net upside of losing the person that you love. And I think what happens is it's almost like, you're going one way, and then all of a sudden you got to go right back the other way. And it's just hard for people. Even for me, growing up in the environment, I mean, my dad signed every letter he wrote positively. And, it was certainly, he knew negative thinking, positive thinking, wasn't perfect, but negative thinking was going to work all the time, and he didn't want to go there. So I just think that's probably one of the biggest challenges when people are telling you to be positive. It can create anxiety, and it's requiring you to move way too fast. So I think that's why a lot of people have kind of given up on it. And the only other place to go has been negative. And unfortunately, negative thinking works negatively. So, in my mind, particularly growing up in an environment where, I started with affirmations at 4 years old, cybernetic waves playing, not hippie stuff, but, first person statements, just a lot of those different types of things. We weren't when I look back, we weren't allowed to watch the nightly news. Couldn't listen to country music. My dad really did a good job of minimizing the negativity in our household, but the only other place to go was positivity. But my goals were never outcome based; they were behavior based. I take setbacks as temporary. I bounce back quickly. I engage in school. It doesn't matter who the teacher is. I can handle the challenge academically. He wanted to foster and facilitate behaviors. But I just had a tough time with positivity. Now you fast forward into the sports world. Well, there are no Tony Robbins in sports. There's no Ed Milet's. There's no Gary V's. The athletes aren't looking for that type of stuff. The business world is, give me any trick, any whatever I can do. Meditate, buy the book, 5 steps to this, 5 steps to that. Athletes are fuck that. They're not looking for that help. So when all of a sudden you start working for Nick Saban or Tom Coughlin, for those who don't follow sports, these are Bill Gates in the sports world, and you have their constituency that does not want your help. You have to develop a message that makes more sense, particularly when 80% are coming from single parent backgrounds, 60% below the poverty line. How do you develop a message for everybody? Meditation is not for everybody. Yeah. Being positive is not for everybody. So over the course of time, these coaches gave me a platform because when I started with them, I made it really simple. Everything we would teach was case studies. We'd study, why Drake made it, how he had 11 #1 songs, why Jamarcus Russell didn't make it, a can't miss $32 million guaranteed out of the NFL in 2 years. What happened to Lance Armstrong? The success of Usain Bolt. So, from the beginning, we were always teaching behaviors, habits. If they do A, B, and C, then I do A, B, and C. Can my talent be a lot better if I mimic behaviors of great performers? Then as we started adding thinking in, I was never pushing positive from the start. We started adding thinking in. We realized that just be positive when you're down 36 points to LSU in the third quarter is not realistic. So we said, okay, we're going to accept that when bad things happen, they happen. And we started studying negativity, and we found out that negativity was a multiple of 4 to 7 times more powerful than positivity.
Wow.
So the elimination of negativity became the goal within the organization. Well, how is negativity carried? language. Language is the number one carrier. It's 10 times more powerful when you verbalize something than when you think it. So if you say it out loud, it's 10 times more powerful. If it's negative, it's a multiple of 4 to 7 on top of that, according to Christine Porath from Georgetown, and a lot of data from the Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic. I mean, you look at the power of negativity. So now if I'm saying negative things out loud, they're 40 to 70 times increasing the likelihood that what I'm saying will happen will guide my mind and my behavior to that. So our goal became, all right, to minimize negativity, we have to stop saying stupid shit out loud. And that's always within my control. We weren't pushing a counter narrative, which is be positive. It was minimize negativity. And that became the starting point for us. Then ultimately we would go to a counter narrative from there.
Okay. Now, what would you say if you are down 36-0, or if you just threw an interception and they returned it for a touchdown? Like, what do you say when you just have that anger, that frustration, and you just feel like you got to get it out?
Well, there's no science behind venting. So venting's for dumbasses. Like people, I just got to get it out. You don't have to get it out. There's nothing about, like, obviously, if you go see a clinical psychologist and you're talking one-on-one about an important issue that you're navigating and narrating through from a mental health counseling perspective, that's different. But if I'm, not performing well in a game, or it's hot, or I don't like a boss, and I go find 3 friends and we sit at a table and talk about how shitty this job is, like, there's no science, there's nothing that says that's good for you. You may feel good in the moment, but what you're doing is you're externalizing what you don't want to have happen. You're catastrophizing, and you're perpetuating what you don't want to have happen from happening. So the first thing is we're not saying anything. So the second thing is a neutral thought is like, I threw the pick, right? Positive is like, hey, just let it go. Can't let it go. I did it. Okay. But something happened to make that happen. My back foot, I fell, a misread. The other guy made a really good play. So a neutral thought is, what's the truth? So I'm going to go to the truth of the moment, which is, this is what happened in the situation. So in that conversation, hey, look, my back foot sailed on me. That's on me. I know with the adjustment, just keep running good routes. Let's get back out there next time, make some plays. It's something along those lines, but you're acknowledging the mistake, but you're just going to the truth of it. You're have emotion, but you're not emotional. Okay. So a neutral thought is that. A positive thought is when you're just trying to pretend a lot of times it didn't happen, and you're immediately like, hey, next series we're going to get them. Let's go down. Hey, we can get 3 touchdowns this period, this quarter, 3 touchdowns next quarter, and get right back in this, as opposed to just focusing on the next series, the next drive, the next behavior.
Now you talk about how powerful it is to talk out loud to yourself. Can you explain why is that so powerful rather than just thinking to yourself?
I don't know exactly why, outside of the fact that what seems to happen is as it comes out, it's almost like an unformed. It's a bunch of wood in your brain, when it's in there subconsciously, but it's almost like you're starting to build the house when it comes out. And so I think that that's just sort of the science of it, the power of, because as I'm saying it, I'm hearing it, and I'm making it potentially more real. And so what we found out is we're always in control of what we say out loud. Like, I can't make anybody say something out loud. I'm always in control of the secondary area where I consume negativity the most, which is what I watch, what I listen to, who I talk to. So if we, that's why for me, I think so many people in the self-help industry have let the broader community down by going straight to things like meditation and straight to things like let that go, be positive, which ultimately in the absence of negativity, positivity has power. But when negativity exists and you try to be positive, they can't compete, right? So if you could just be less negative, imagine your webpage having 85 web pages open, right? Your RAM and your computer doesn't function well. So instead of like trying to open more better pages, shut down 70 of them, and you all of a sudden start to see how much faster your computer works. And negativity, and if you read It Takes What It Takes, It Takes What It Takes, I don't think proves neutral thinking. I think what it does is it proves that negativity works negatively. And I don't care who you are. If you say, well, I just need to vent, I need to be that way, and I'm still successful, then I think most of your success is happening in spite of yourself. I think that's what it is. So the venting of it, the verbalizing of it is where the power is. And if you verbalize positively, it just doesn't have anywhere near the power as verbalizing negatively. And look at our politics today. To take a negative message out in the political landscape versus a positive message, they don't even compete. Yeah. And that just goes back to the science of 10,000 years ago and how we're wired. We need to accept that we're wired to accept negativity far more readily, and we have to feed that a lot less.
I tested that theory. Whenever I send it 2 exact emails, everything in the body. One of them had the subject line, good news, and the other one had the subject line, bad news. Same exact email. And good news had bad news had 3-4 times more open rates than good news. He's 100% correct. I 100% agree with you. I wish it was the other way around. If there was a news channel that had all positive news, I don't think anybody would watch it.
Well, it just, look, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they understand the data, and the data is very clear about, negativity being a lot more powerful. Yeah. So it's their job, I think, to communicate. They have responsibility to the people that are investing money, advertising with them, not to being truthful. Yeah. That's why for me, when you look at the data, 3 minutes of cable news before 9 a.m. increases your probability by 27%. At the end of the day, you'll say you had a terrible day.
Really?
3 minutes. And we have so much of this data in there.
Wow.
So, if you wake up in the morning and you start with that, it's just, that's not responsible.
It automatically puts you in a fight or flight mode. You're automatically going to be, you're already cringing, so if you start your day like that, I can totally see that. But
and it's not, hey, start with, The Little Mermaid. And I think that's where the industry has somehow been confused or things along those lines. That's not a language that I've ever spoken. I wouldn't last at Alabama, Florida State, Georgia, within the special operations community with the opportunities I get there from time to time. The audience is too sophisticated, too intelligent, isn't looking to be fooled. And so it's more, be mindful of what you start your morning with. So it could be more benign, like the weather, or it could be like a Russell Wilson's going to listen to upbeat Christian music, not going to have a TV on, going to stretch, going to do different types of things. That's going to position his day in his own mind, better, even if he's injured, even if he's struggling, even if somebody's going through cancer. No matter what's happening, you don't need to compound things. And if things are going really, really well, you just keep them going that way. Keep your expectations high.
Yeah, it reminds me of, I was listening to Jesse Itzler, and he was training for an ultra marathon, and he was talking about how he couldn't break past 38 miles. And he started training with this guy who helped him, and he said the number one thing he said was, don't give pain a voice. When you're hurting, when you feel it, just don't say it. You don't. Right. And so how do you think that translates into especially sports and everything, but especially business? Because most of our audience are entrepreneurs or people wanting to be entrepreneurs. How do you think that can impact the success that you can have financially and everything?
Well, give me some examples.
You're looking at the balance sheet, and everything is telling you that this isn't going to work. Everything's telling you that pretty soon you're not gonna have enough money for payroll or whatever it is. Like when you're heading into the darkest times, especially right now with what's going on with the economy, so many people are in that space. How does your headspace, how can you control that, and how can you just get rid of what you see?
I don't know that you can get rid of what you see, and I think winning right now, being successful, is a relative term. And athletes understand this. Like let's say a 5-star prospect comes to Georgia, and in his mind, winning is starting and being first team all SEC. But the reality is that's not winning as a freshman, within that environment, making the team, competing, playing special teams, doing different, so we have to, in some cases for people making payroll for an additional, 4 cycles is going to be a short-term win. That's hopefully going to be a bridge to another, payroll loan. There are unique realities of right now where part of it is planning for the short term, accepting the reality of what's happening now. But neutral thinking is the past is real, right now is real, but the future is based on what we do, not how we feel about now. And so I don't think there's a shortcut through right now. I think it's a matter of getting your mind on adaptation and doing the very best you can to create a value proposition, and to do the best from a business perspective. If you have to furlough, if you have to adjust, I think what we're finding out is just opening amidst all the the reality of where this disease is right now, is not the best option. And so, how you adapt and adjust organizationally, including, shrinking, getting bigger, whatever it is mission critical. And so to answer your question, you can't really pretend that what we're seeing and what's happening isn't real. You've got to figure out the very best way you can. We got what happened, what's happening, and what will happen. How you can address what's happening and what will happen, and learn from what has happened. And I think there are, my book came out in February. All this happened in March. I had all these events, scheduled around the country. Everything got canceled. And that was a lot of money, for me, particularly as the book, even though I'm a relative unknown, in the business psychology world, because the marketing side's so different for me. You're not going to see me like walking off the plane and telling everybody how much fucking money I have and copy me and you'll make all this money, because I don't. I come from a different world. So, I wasn't even on Instagram 6 months ago, because it's not a part of the world I'm from. To promote a book, obviously, it's a lot different. So we're trying to learn how to do more of that stuff. But everything that I had forecasted was gone. So, and then, okay, so how do you navigate? I'm going to be, no question, net negative from where I wanted to be, but, how can I get net neutral to survive through the year, and make adjustments? And now, as we've seen within the webinar and the Zoom, Microsoft Teams community, businesses have accepted that. And in the beginning, they kind of made every speaker do it for free. Even my speaker's agent, our group at Limitless Minds, now there's a real marketplace, and there's some effective and efficiency to it. Russell Wilson and I just did one to 127,000 people. That's a market. We would never be able to hit 127,000 people together, obviously. So now I think the market's like settling at probably 50 to 60% of what you would normally make if you were speaking. But you can do multiple within a day. You can get there. They're efficient. I like them. I have a good sweatshirt on and some shorts and flip flops, out here in Manhattan Beach with you guys. So I've adapted and I've adjusted, but I also had to adapt my mind, not to be dwelling on the fact that I had these 23 events booked for X dollars. That's over. It's gone. So what am I going to do going forward? And part of it was going back to the sports world where I wanted to move more out of to help a bigger audience, where I knew I could get some things done and find a way to be okay, not perfect, and then adjust my mind to how I was going to define success. So many of us spend our lives looking on a past that didn't happen, that we don't open ourselves up to a future that's able to happen.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching the interview so far. You know, one of the keys to my success has always been productivity and time management. And now I have a video for you so how you can increase your productivity and really start getting stuff done. So click somewhere below here and message me the word time. I'm going to send you my free video training so you can take your productivity to the next level. Now let's get back to the interview. Like that, I love that. Now, how does someone overcome self-limiting beliefs?
Well, you know, self-limiting beliefs are going to be facilitated, like your beliefs watch your actions, and it's like this partnership in your brain. You're never going to manipulate your beliefs. You're going to partner with them. So as your beliefs kind of, you know, as I'm giving them a personality, watch what you do, then they ultimately shift and change according to what you do. That's why I'm a big believer that action, you know, the ability to behave yourself into changing is more important than feeling yourself into changing. So if I want to exercise, it's a matter of 3 alarms, it's doing whatever I do, and it's just getting myself out there. Halfway through the 2-mile walk, I'll be glad I did it. But if I wait to want to do it, it may never happen.
It makes total sense.
You know, and I think also when it comes to things like eating, you know, like having a good balance from, all right, the first goal is not to eat bad, you know, as opposed to put pressure to eat good. So like at a lot of the football environments I'm in, if you can drive up and order it, no bueno. And that's your first place you start. You can still walk into a Subway or whatever, but you know, you're just kind of controlling the behavior. And that's what I've seen. You know, what's a Russell Wilson? A collection of behaviors. What's a top command sergeant major? A collection of behavior. You know, what's a great, COO, male or female? She's a collection of great behaviors. What's a great parent? A collection of behaviors. Are you born with that, or are you doing that? I think as you get those right and you identify them, even in relationships, communicating, spending time together, all those things, your beliefs start to see your actions, and then they form your identity. And your identity is what you do, and it also is what you don't do.
Now, are there any daily habits or rituals that you do or that you see these top people do that keep their mind right and keep them in that right headspace?
I mean, there's a lot of them. You know, I think there's some very specific ones depending on what you do. You know, like in pro football, you know, meetings start at 8:30. You typically see your best players there at 6:30, about 2 hours earlier. At the end of the day, ice baths, a really good post recovery process, time to bed, you know, volume of sleep, managing fatigue science, you know, all those things that I think they're pretty consistent across cycling, basketball, baseball, football. Are there anomalies? Of course, there's anomalies in everything. But I think in business, you know, outbound calls, you know, is huge. Constantly, my friend that used to run NASCAR, you know, would do 10 new calls a week, 30 a month, just to constantly put himself in a situation where A, he's got to come up with new people to call, and B, he's constantly discussing new business options with new people. You know, so I think client retention, doing everything you can to retain a client, so much more powerful than going out and getting new clients. And I think within a business, you know, 49% of customers leave because they were treated by indifference or a lack of respect by one employee. So learning how, I think, from a routine, a good process to stay connected with your clients, follow up, behave. But I think those are all things that are not gifts as much as they are routines and behaviors. For me, I get up first thing in the morning. I always get a little stuffed up. I have allergies in the morning. So you guys are getting my pre-morning allergies because I did a shorter walk this morning. My niece is here with me. But, I always do just kind of walk a little bit around. Now it's a little more careful. First thing I do is I get my mask. I do all the different types of things. I don't watch anything in the morning. And in the 4 months, I think maybe I've watched 77 minutes of news. And the vast majority I've watched is Netflix, movies, documentaries, things along those lines. Really trying to minimize. But and exercise is, even if I'm going through some unique challenge, to the degree I can do some version of exercise, it's huge for my confidence.
Yeah. What do you think about journaling and writing things down? I know Sam's huge with that. Writes his goals down, looks at them every day. What's your take on that?
A big believer. I mean, I just think it's the simpler we can make it, the better. Yeah. Michael Johnson, the great Olympic sprinter from 90 to 2000. I remember when some of our NFL guys were talking to him about goals and, how he did it and where he learned it. He just said that when he would go into a grocery store and he had 6-7 things written down, he found out that he would walk in and out in 5-10 minutes and go, aisle 8, 6, 5, 4, boom, cross out the list and leave. And if he didn't, he'd be there for 25 minutes, find himself in aisle 10 for 5 minutes, saying, why am I in aisle 10? Should I get the Twinkies? Should I get the Wheat Thins? What am I doing? And then all of a sudden he comes back home and he's got a bunch of things he didn't want, and then he forgot half the things he needed. And he said, if I do it in Safeway and it makes me better, why would I not do it with my career? I think we've made goal setting too complicated. Yeah. It's just simple, efficient, boom, hits the frontal cortex. We look at it, and then I think there's the real estate world calls it like a success list. And, however you want to do it, if you get everything down on paper, it'll relieve some anxiety because it's there. And I think how you prioritize from there. I still like writing things on paper.
Yeah, me too.
A lot of people like their phones.
Me too.
I've never really figured out something on my phone where it would populate with the right 4 or 5 things on my screen to really help me. When I write it on my phone, it gets lost amongst 35 apps. But I like the idea, because it's just how the brain works. Yeah. I just think if you think about it like a grocery store, that's the best way, because for many of us men who walk in like tough guys, without the list, or we leave it in the car, we don't look at it. It just makes sense. So I think doing simple better is probably one of the more powerful things that you can do. Master the fundamentals and the basics, and then I think your talent takes over when the complicated parts of life hit.
I think whether it's in sports, I think you agree with me. You're a sports guy, and I'm a business guy. And whether it's in sports and business, they say the brilliance is in the basics. And I think that when you keep things simple, basic, it's so much more efficient. It gets done. When things are complicated, your brain's kind of shut down and doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, and I think going back to your earlier comment, which I love, don't give pain a voice. Like the simple element is, I'm feeling the pain at mile 38, but I'm not going to give it more power than it deserves.
So I did 4 yesterday, man. I kicked my ass.
In my life, I'm not going to acknowledge that it's not a tough challenge, but I'm not going to go on my former significant other's Facebook for 90 minutes a day, which might make it significantly harder to move forward, even though I'm in pain. I'm not denying my pain. I'm just giving less of my pain an opportunity to stay in the past. And that's where I just think the psychological architecture that we can build and develop just needs to be demystified. And I think so much of the business psychology, and I get why dudes are walking off fucking planes, and I get the aspirational element. Just like in the athletic world, an athlete's going to say, hey, dickhead, you're here to serve me, so I don't give a shit about your plane. That's just how it is. I've only got 2.5 years in this league. How can you help me right now?
Yeah.
That's that world, which, I'm proud to come from, but I also know, that maybe had I been messing around that other world, I might have a plane. It'd be a lot easier to get around with a plane right now than, feeling like I got to ride a bike someplace.
Yeah.
And I say that affectionately, but y'all know what I'm talking about. As you see, because I've had to study this world now. I went head to head with all these, the Brene Browns and all the different people when my book came out. And, I being a bestseller was like a really big goal to me. And I hired Tony Robbins PR people. And I did everything. I spent all my money from the book so I could get a second book. And making the Wall Street Journal bestseller list was a big deal because, I didn't have any Instagram followers. I didn't have any Twitter followers. Because if you do that stuff within the sports world, you're not going to have a job, because the number one thing the best performers in the world need to do is trust you.
Yeah.
So now the information we took forward is the simple information. And Russell Wilson, the quarterback who was the highest paid athlete in the world till 2 days ago, Patrick Mahomes, congratulations to Patrick. He's going to be standing on his money and talking to the moon. But we felt like from a B2C level, from a digital level, that the business world, the educational world needed the fundamentals of thinking at a more inclusive level for everybody, as opposed to a book on meditation or mindfulness that's for 1% of 1%. Now, I will tell you this, I don't devalue the power of meditation and the strength of closing the outside world, reimagining a new inside world, imprinting that, starting to see yourself as the person you want to become, and ultimately changing from the inside out. I just think it's one of the harder skills to develop. It's an easier one to quit. I think it doesn't have the power if you watch 8 hours of news, if you say a bunch of negative things out loud, if you don't behave in alignment with a great performer, but you go to your Headspace app at 10 o'clock at night as if that's supposed to fix everything.
Yeah.
We advance people in our education to imagery, to meditation, to visualization, to affirmations, once they've learned all the basics.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the self-help industry doesn't spend any time on the basics. It curates to the 1% of 1% who have 38 degrees from Harvard, or it's just a consumer that's not very educated and starts right away with the hard stuff. I do yoga. I did obviously up until this last 5-6 months. I'd go every morning. I get it. At the end, they do shavasana, all that stuff. Like, I love it. It's part of my process. But the other stuff's a huge part too.
Nobody wants to do the hard things first.
Right. It makes it so much easier to quit.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I'm blessed from 12, 13, well, really 22 years, because as a high school teacher for 4 years, particularly in LA Unified, if you want to connect, you got to speak a language that's for everybody. And there's nothing wrong with the top people in the academic world speaking to the top. And I went to Summit LA and saw the Goldman Sachs people meditating on top of like different, it was a trip to go to and speak at. But they've advanced themselves to that level where they can speak on that level.
Yeah.
Most of us haven't.
Yeah, I'm curious. Ed Milet always says, he says that you have a thermostat in your life, and whatever you achieve is according to where your thermostat is. If your financial thermostat's at 70 degrees, if you start getting it up, it's just gonna come back down naturally. And if it goes a little lower, you're gonna heat it up and you're gonna get it back to where you're average at. What do you think about that? And how can you raise that thermostat? Like, how can you just operate and become better at a higher level?
Well, first of all, I like Ed Mylett. I think Ed's got a really good message. I think he's plain spoken, but I think he's also he can look at his business practices and give some really good examples, and which I think is really powerful. But I do agree. In the sports world, we talk about being a thermometer or a thermostat. A thermometer is constantly going up or down based on the temperature of the people around them. A thermostat is you set it at a certain place and you rise or fall to that. We need more thermostats in our world, particularly federally right now, and less thermometers. And the people that are bouncing all over the place. In sports, we'd call that, or business, an environmental athlete. Somebody you put great coaches around them, great people, a lot of great support, they're going to rise. But you put a lot of the other things around, they're not going to make it. And I agree exactly with Ed on that in terms of but we need help a lot of times understanding how to set that temperature. I think that's where parenting, education, teachers, leadership, nurturing great business partners, coworkers, teammates can help us. Hey, you can do more. Keep your expectations here. Or, hey, be patient. I know you're not at 73 degrees yet, but you're going to get there.
Uh-huh. So when you walk in to talk to Russell Wilson, or you talk in some of the high operators in the special forces and everything like that, what are you doing with them? What are you telling them to get from the already high level that they're at to an even higher level?
Well, a lot of times, in the military community, it's just been a partnership of sort of best practices with the sports world. So I don't have to come in there and say, this is how you think neutrally in Fallujah. It's not my job. And they're a unique population because they give you no inflection. You have no idea if you're succeeding or failing. So really for me in that world, it's more, this is how we're focusing in the fourth quarter versus Auburn. These are examples. This is what we were doing. This is what we were thinking playing LSU. This is how we came to this idea of neutral. And the idea of neutral has been great with my friends, and the people in that world have really resonated with that. And the evolution as we go back through how we came up with it. Forward, reverse, neutral, car, less about Taoism and Asian thinking and more like this neutral, it's more about behavior and language. So it's an educational platform around the fundamentals of thinking. As those get established, your conversations become situational. All right, we lost to Philadelphia. What's the truth about the game? I had 4 touchdowns, I had 2 picks. This was a situation, started fast, started slow. So like on a Thursday night when Russ and I get together, we'll watch something typically. We study constantly. We might go back to him versus Ohio State. We might go back to Joe Montana. We might go back to Usain Bolt at a pre-race ritual, and then have, we'll watch something that'll give us a framework, an idea about performing under pressure. Pressure is a privilege. And then we'll have a conversation about that. But, now Russ and I have been together 10 years. New concepts I'm bringing in constantly. But the bigger thing is situationally. How do we stay situationally? What's happening now? How can we influence it to the best degree that we can?
Okay. Yeah. Dude, all of this is honestly incredibly helpful, because I've seen it with people maybe outside of kind of the personal development space and everything. Negative thinking is so prevalent with them, and it's just unconscious.
But negative language.
Yeah.
Like a lot of us, this is where you have to really differentiate when you talk to your audience. You guys have a big impact. We're all over the place with our thinking.
Yeah.
And our thinking, just based upon how we're wired, is going to be more negative. And that's okay. Okay? It's the negative externalization and the consumption. So if people are listening and they're, man, I'm like, how could you not be a little bit negative right now?
Yeah.
It's just, what are you feeding it? Are you feeding it 4 hours of news? Are you feeding it conversations with the wrong people? I love the idea, starve your distractions, feed your focus. starve the things that you don't need, feed the things that can help you. And a lot of what's going to navigate business people through this right now is living in the real world, but not overindulging in a bad way.
Yeah. Have you read a book called What to Say to Yourself When You Talk to Yourself?
I have not.
It's a great book on, how to overcome negative self-talk.
Yes.
And that book forever kind of changed my life. And what you're saying today, everything that you said is spot on. Just because something's going negative, you can't overcome it and go talk positive, because now basically you're kind of bullshitting yourself, right? You got to have neutral thinking, and then you got to stop the negative self-talk that goes with negativity. Negativity is not going to go away, but you got to stop the negative self-talk. And
the negative self-talk that Sam has shifted. Like, we can change our words inside, because our own mind is 10 times more influential, and we can change our words inside, which help. But a lot of it is we're always in control of what we do. Yeah. You're in control whether you turn that TV on or not. You're in control when you call that cell phone and have that conversation or not. Now, other things are out of your control within the business world, relative to the market and things along those lines. But what you do next is not. So I'm a big believer in what you say to yourself, trigger words. Yes. Because your mind's three-dimensional. Yeah. You tell yourself you see it, you feel it, you do it. You tell yourself you see it, or you do it. You do it, you think it, you see it, you feel it. Yeah. However you want to put that all together. But I think I think the biggest thing, is believing that to the degree we have influence, we're utilizing it. And I think that's key. And then I just think being practical. I want to see our world be smart. And this isn't political. If that's what I love. I work for an NBA organization, and they give us like the truth about like what's happening right now, about how to social distance, where we should stand, the concept of the mask, why we do this, where we're okay, where we need to be really careful. And then you live your life in alignment with truth. And so when negative things I think are happening, the quickest thing you do is go to the truth. And then, so that's like a car stopping and going back to neutral, saying, all right. And then you can go backwards again by doing what you were doing, or you can go forwards by changing what you're doing. But you still might be in the middle of a really challenging moment, and you're not pretending that you're not.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's where the mind, says, hey man, this is tough, but there's something I could do to influence it, as opposed to conceding the rest of the year. Look, we're in Q3 right now. No one knows what's going to happen. There's, I'm not going to let a Twitter account control my life, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or whatever. So I never follow that. And it doesn't have any power over me. Yeah. And then I think the last piece is being neutral is being non-judgmental, accepting people for who they are, and allowing them, hey, that's just how she is. And yes, she's treating me this way, good or bad, but that's how she treats people, or that's how she treats me. What can I do moving forward to keep myself? So many people concede or give up because they're pissed off because they don't want to give in to letting that person think their negative treatment is working. But then you're really hurting yourself. So taking the judgment out, hey, he's just not a real good communicator as a leader. No problem. I'm not going to expect that from him. What can I do in my outbound calls with my pharmaceutical company, whatever my situation is, to do the best I can? I know I can't get in as many hospitals. What am I going to do? How do I maximize it? How do I adjust and do the very best that I can? That's where we got to win right now, be the best we can be, and it sounds trite, under the current circumstances, and be open to the fact the circumstances can change, but we also got to be intelligent, they're about right now, and I'm probably way on the other side, hiding in my house, getting my exercise, going up to Lake Arrowhead, doing different things like that. But I know myself. I know I get a little bit more scared. So I don't feed that. I try to control as much as I can control. And I'm not engaging heavily with the world because I'm a little bit afraid right now, and I'm okay with that. You know, I'm not going to get on a plane. Other people are totally different, you know, with how they look at that.
Yeah.
You know, I know me.
That's good. That's good. So Trevor, for people who don't know, who don't follow you, who want to get your book, who maybe want you to come speak, where can they find more about you?
Well, you know, our B2C business, Limitless Minds, is, you know, you can just thinkbig-gofar.com. For myself, social media, which I am learning, takes what it takes, right? You know, at Trevor Moawad, which I think you guys could post on Twitter and Instagram. And the book really has done, I couldn't be more happy. Andy Staples from Sports Illustrated, now The Athletic, wrote it with me. Russell wrote the foreword. It's on Audible. It's on Harper One and HarperCollins did it with me. I got to follow the book Shoe Dog, believe it or not.
That is
and then Tim Grover's book Attack, same editors. And you could get it on Amazon, you know, any place, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, any place where you can find books. Simple, easy read, built for people like me with 28 IQs. And I think,
I love it. We definitely got to order it today, man.
I think something people will enjoy. But the other thing I also think, don't be a serial reader. You know, we can read ourselves into too many different philosophies. Get a handful of things that you really buy in. If you like Adam Grant,
go deep in there.
You know,
right?
give or take or go there. You know, you like different, you know, kind of stick with it. I always get, what should I read next? I'm like, hey man, just do what the fucking book says. You know, like, you know, start there before you want to read how do I learn more about neutral? There's not really any place. You know, it's a language we've been speaking behind the scenes in the sports world. So I can't send you to 8 other books on neutral thinking. You got to trust the efficacy that I'm giving you based upon where we're at. So I'm a big supporter of reading. I read a lot of Grisham, Crichton, but I think don't over-philosophize. Pick your system. Pick your people you trust in their podcast, whether it's you guys, whether it's Ed Milet, you know, whether it's, you know, your favorite golf one, and trust that philosophy, trust yourself, and stay the course.
Well, brother, we appreciate having you, man. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to getting my hands on your book, and we got to, you know, invite you back on again. We appreciate you. Hey guys, if you liked today's episode, do me a huge favor. Go ahead and leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel, leave me a review, and tag a few friends that you think can benefit from what we shared today. Really appreciate it. God bless.